Hello, and as you can see, we're living in some pretty unprecedented times. Like we're in the middle of a pandemic. So on one hand, uh, this really sucks. I mean, there's a lot to be afraid of, and I think we are. I mean, so in terms of we're having universities and schools are shutting down. We have we're all having to almost social distance, and there's all sorts of things that we're dealing with that are unprecedented, and it's had a lot of implications for um, in our lives, and especially in terms of things like not just UBI, but just our own economic and psychological well-being. Um, so okay, first the maybe the bad news and the hopeful news. So the bad news or the scary news is that um, there really aren't enough. We're really wrestling with lots of tests for the coronavirus. So if things at sometime this week in the United States, we're hoping to find out of being able to be able to say that about 100,000 people will have been tested total within the United States. We hope to get to that by the end of this week. But really, when you consider the scale, we really need to be able to have tests of 100,000 people per day. So that's the nature of the race that's taking place right now, that we're all afraid because it's the uncertainty. There's a lot of uncertainty going on. But on the other hand, there's actually a reason to be hopeful, I think. And I want you to look at it this way. We have, and just let's just focus just on the people in the United States. So like the hundreds of millions of people in the United States, like 300 million. We have a lot of people with the United States, all of us, are almost taking a time out from some of the things that are happening in like the work. Like we're all focused on what we can do ourselves, for each other, and together. So in some ways, my expectation based off from an organizational perspective, we are about to experience within the next 2 weeks what may be one of the most surprising, most ingenuity periods within the next 2 weeks within the United States. As all of us, with all of our differences and all of our experiences and talents, we're all trying to figure out how to have our lives run differently. And so, in other words, in addition to the fear, there's actually a lot of hope. All right. So number one, there's a lot of talk today about cash payment out to all of us as part of to help us cope with this pandemic. That's great news. I really love seeing something like this as opposed to some kind of a tax credit or something like that. I mean, so this is good. Cash to the people. Let's empower the people for once. So all that is good. However, that is not necessarily a UBI. Right now, it's a one-time cash payment is sort of what I'm hearing so far. And that is very much, I mean, that's been done before. But basically what we want is something like that's a little bit more every month and that kind of thing. And in order to be able to see whether or not, one way to judge whether or not that this is going to be effective is if there is discussion about how it's going to be paid for. And for you to understand like how that's going to work, I'm going to bring to mind, I'll give you a sense of how to think about this. What we're going through now is in many ways, with the pandemic, is an acceleration of what Andrew Yang has always been talking about. Remember, like automation and how that's going to change things? I want you to think for a second about what's happening, in particular with schools and universities. I know in the university world that I've been in, that distance learning has been in the background for years. And we're kind of sort of been dancing around with it. And now we have to do it. All these professors, it's like, oh, you have to figure it out and you got to do this. So all of a sudden, like that, we're having to do this. And I think we're only a short time away from a lot of students and parents who are sending who are paying lots of money, like $50,000 a year to go, to be on campus for the campus experience. We're not far away from some of them asking for their money back, at least partially, because they're going to have to be away from things. And I want you also to think about what's happening with restaurants as well. So just think about how, because we're all having, like, restaurants having to close, restaurants or eating establishments overnight have to not do dining in, and they have to rely a lot on what? They have to rely on takeout and delivery. So just think about, just as a lot of businesses are going to suffer, just think about which ones are going to do well under this environment. Think about Amazon. Amazon is actually hiring right now, and they're actually raising the price. Why? Why are they doing that? Because they are basically doing that model. So basically, if there ever was a time to not just have the cash payment as a one-time thing, but actually have cash, like, to all of us, each of us, over a period of time, if there was ever a time to attach it to a value-added tax from companies like Amazon, this would be the time. Because what we're really going through is not just purely something scary or tragic. What we are going through right now is almost like a kind of birth. A birth of the kind of thing that Andrew Yang was talking about, the world with more automation, more like almost like new ways of work and opportunity. And so I just want everyone to keep in mind that as we go into the next couple of weeks, in a way, we're kind of in the birth canal. We're really in the birth canal of something that's very, yes, it may feel very uncomfortable, but it's also potentially quite promising for us all. So God bless and good luck to everyone out there.